he said, make sure you perform it to the best of your ability. Don't slough it, and figure also all the other actors are great, and that's great to be generous, but you've got to be generous to the whole ensemble, so that every piece in the ensemble fits together and does well.
And the other influence of Don Siegel was that you said once, I'm like Don Siegel, if I can get it in the first take as a director, I will.
Well, he used to like to say that he was always trying for it. He didn't always get it, but he always trying for it. In fact, he was very superstitious. He always stand there. Every scene, he always had his fingers crossed, like this. And I said, why do you have your fingers crossed? We're not in any big rush here. And he'd go, well, that's superstitious, and he'd do it. And then I'd see sometimes I'd be doing a scene, and I'd see out of the corner of my eye, out of the periphery, I'd see him standing there with his fingers crossed, and I'd break my concentration. I'd tell him, I said, Don, put your hand behind your back, will you?
Is Unforgiven really your last Western, like it says in the papers?
Well, I don't know. I don't know how that came about in the papers.
You didn't really say that.
A lot of people speculated on, would this seems like, people would say, this seemed like you were putting it into it. You were demythologizing. Yeah. This genre, by the way you're approaching it, it seems like you're saying it's the last Western. Well, I say, in a way, it is. I mean, to me, I don't know if it's the last one, barring having another script that I would do right this minute. I would say it would be the last one, but tomorrow morning somebody may come in with one that is what I would equally unique as I thought this one was, and then I might say, well, okay, I'll try. That's a whole new way to go, a whole new direction, and there's no reason to put it out of your mind like that. But at the same token, I kind of held this from '83 till now, to the last year or so, to make this film, because I felt it would be my last and sort of my definitive statement on what the West was all about. But that doesn't mean that somebody else won't write something very, very unique someday. And it may be done by me, or it may be done by someone else.
But it's only in the foreseeable future, you said that as they say when they announce, take investments in companies. Well,
you can say never and all that kind of thing, and how many times can you retire or make comebacks? People do that all the time. I don't want to make that statement.
You don't want to retire as either an actor or as a director, do you? You said somewhere about you could always make Dirty Derelict or Rampage in a geriatric ward. I mean, you don't want to give up either, do you?
No, absolutely. But you'd play roles, or you'd do films that you feel are current in your way of thinking. Whether I probably wouldn't be interested in doing some of the films that I might have done earlier, because I've changed. I've aged. I've grown. Hopefully grown wiser, and maybe I have other stories I'd like to tell. I wouldn't want to be repetitive. I wouldn't want to go back and do the characters I've played before.
You wouldn't want to do Dirty Harry 7?
No, I think so. I did a few of those. Along the way, there was a lot of pressure to keep that character going, and I must say that the public seemed to enjoy it. But for me personally, there's no way I can.
You said once, I probably have an affinity for the underdog, the downtrodden, the depressed, and maybe that's to do with my childhood, you said, growing up in the Depression, and your dad searching for a job and so on. Do you think that's right? That's true?
Well, maybe. I think we're all a product of how we've grown up and what we've seen in life, and your early impressions as when you're a child from, say, 5 to 10 or 15 are probably very, I guess people call them their formative years or what have you, but they probably have an impact, subconsciously even.
But you remember those days of the Depression? You remember those days of
very well, yeah.
Searching for a job? And
yeah, very well. They were.
Were you short of money to having enough to eat and things? Or?
Well, in the very early days of Depression, we were, but later on after in the war, my parents both worked, so we had two working. I guess they call them latchkey or whatever the buzzword is nowadays, but I was. A lot of times, both parents worked, but we got used to that, my sister and myself, and we felt that, and they were trying to make a better life for us, and they did.
And you said once about you, in April '84, you said, "My father always kept telling me you don't get something for nothing. And although I rebelled, I never rebelled against that." Did you rebel?
Did I say all this stuff, and why you kept all these? Well, I suppose
we
I
have
did, yeah.
your entire life record here. It's like, this is your life.
I said that, yeah, I've said that. He did say that all the time. But that was because he just got married during the, just before the Depression, and a couple of years before the Depression, and they had very, very tough times. He didn't believe, and his parents before him were hard-working kind of people, and so he always felt that you had to earn everything. There was nobody was going to give you any gifts, and he said that right up till the very, very end of his life. And I always remember it. I passed it on, I guess, indirect to my kids, but I didn't say it quite like that because, you know, today who can relate to that any more than I could relate to his problems? They're not going to relate to mine.
And how old was he? How old were you, rather, when he died?
I was I was in my late 30s.
So he'd seen you become a success.
Right.
He had time to see that.
He had been with me through the Rawhide years and in the first dollar films in Italy, and I was lucky enough to be able to send them to Europe around.
When they found that they'd given birth to an actor, of all things, were they amazed? They didn't expect that, presumably.
They didn't expect, I don't think they knew what I was going to do. I remember I called my father up and said, I have an opportunity. I have an opportunity to be a contract player at a studio. And I was going to college here in Los Angeles. And I said, I have an opportunity to do that. And I said, I'm thinking seriously about doing it. He said, don't get involved in all that stuff. He said, he says, that's dream stuff. You don't want to get involved in all that. It's just, you know, stick with what you're studying there. I wasn't just taking a regular business administration major, which everyone takes when they're not quite sure what they want to do. But, and I said, well, yeah, I just have an inkling I want to try this. And I was going to drama classes at night and stuff, which I didn't get into with him. But so eventually it just kind of happened. And then, you know, there was a struggling years, and there was not too much comment made about all that. But then when Rawhide came along, he was pleased, and he was pleased to also to repeat this story over and over again. I was the guy who advised him not to.
Oh yeah, yes. Well, he sounds like I remember. I was asking a number of people about the moment they knew when they were a success. And Roger Moore said, the moment my parents stopped saying, get a proper job, you know, which is rather the similar.
That's kind of the same thing, yeah, exactly.
And what did you, before the Rawhide years, you dug pools and things? What
well,
did you do in Los Angeles?
In those days, you went to school on the GI Bill, which was like $110 a month. It sounds like it wouldn't take you too far today, but back in the early 50s it would. And so I was using that to go to school, but I did work I managed an apartment building to get a free apartment, and I worked in a gas station after school, and I did a lot of stuff like that. I bounced around, and then I finally, then after I became an actor and had been under contract for a year and a half or so, and then thrown out, I had to go back to work again because you just can't sit around waiting for an agent to call and say maybe. So I did dig pools and that sort of thing, augment.
That's another good reason for being a producer and a director, not just an actor.
So you don't have to dig your own pool.
Yeah, exactly. You just dig your own grave or whatever. But I mean, did you ever consider being a musician professionally?
I did when I was younger. Yeah, I started.
Because you played the cornet.
Yeah, I played cornet and I played the flugelhorn. I fooled around with those for a couple of years, and I played the piano at a young age for a while, and I play at functions, and I used to sneak down into a saloon in downtown Oakland when I was 16, and I'd play at night, and the guys, they'd feed me pizzas and give me all the beer I wanted to drink, which in those days they weren't so strict about that sort of thing. But it was kind of fun. I'd sneak down there and play a little bit, and once in a while get a tip or something.
You used to meditate twice a day. Do you do that?
Occasionally, yeah.
What does that do?
I find that I can, it's a very good, it's just a very good way to kind of come down from the day's events. It's a very good way to kind of think up ideas and write story material. You kind of get yourself in a way where you're not thinking about all what the phone calls I have to make, et cetera, et cetera.
And so it helps you to concentrate and helps you to think more clearly.
Yeah, you don't have any outside. You just take a peaceful time by yourself, some point during the day, a half hour or what have you, and just kind of let your mind wander, and let your abstract mind go, and you can kind of. I've thought up some what I thought were pretty interesting sequences doing that.
And growing older, doesn't worry you, does it?
Hasn't so far. There may come a time. No, so far I must say I'm enjoying it. I think there's a lot of great things about maturity. You sort of become a little bit more comfortable within yourself. But at the same token, I guess there's a time in everybody's life you say, well, boy, I sure don't feel like I did 20 years ago. But right now, I've had no complaints.
And I saw one reference to it in terms of being alive, that your closest brush with death was probably a plane crash in 1951?
Yeah, well, that was back in the 50s, yeah, when I was in the military.
What happened?
I
read a brief reference to it.
We just piled in the ocean. I was hopping a ride on a plane. I was in the service, and we just piled in the ocean. And it was one of those things. We did a little swimming, stuff like that, a little hiking.
That is
Clint
Eastwood with an English understatement. We did a little swimming, a little hiking. How far did you do your little swimming?
Well, I've got some English ancestry.